Greetings to all. Welcome to the official YouTube channel of SRN International School. I am Pallavi Tandon, Faculty of English at SRN International School. Today we will be learning about Chapter 2 of Grade 11 from the textbook Hornbill, We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together, written by Jordan Cook and Alan East. Let me first of all give you an introduction about this story. The story We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together is a story of extreme courage and skill exhibited by Jordan Cook, his family and crewmen in a war with water and waves for survival. This story is an example of the fact that courage, bravery, and togetherness can be a remedy for any illness of the world. The family celebrated their new year on boarding the ship. Author. Now let me tell you about the authors, Jordan Cook and Alan East. Jordan Cook was born on December 3, 1978 in Toronto, and he is a two-time Canadian Olympic sailor. He sails for the Royal Canadian Yacht Club. He is the son of Stephen Cook and Linda Cook, and he had a great interest in writing stories too. Cook is a graduate of the Engineering Physics program at Queen's University. At Queen's University, he also met his 2008 Olympic team partner, Ben Remocker, where they were members of the university sailing team. Cook and Remocker became the first Canadians to sail a 49er in an Olympic regatta at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, where they finished 14th. In 2009, Cook partnered up with the West Vancouver sailor Hunter Loden, and the two campaigned together for the 2012 Olympics Games. Cook and Loden came third in the first race of the 49er class in the 2012 Olympic Games, but did not qualify for the medal race. The second author is Alan East. Alan was admitted to the role of solicitors in 2003 and has gained extensive experience as a litigator, manager, and legal trainer. In 2004, he co-founded and managed a niche legal practice specializing in criminal litigation and prison law, gaining higher rights of audience in criminal proceedings and working as a duty solicitor. In 2007, he joined the Crown Prosecution Service as a senior Crown prosecutor. In 2010, Alan joined Coventry University as a senior lecturer in law and worked passionately to support access to justice, working closely with Central England law. In 2016, he became a director of Coventry Independent Advice Service. Now, let me tell you the theme of this story, that is, We Are Not Afraid to Die. This particular chapter revolves around a part of the round the world voyage undertaken by the narrator and his family in a sailboat. It describes their thrilling journey across the sea and their close encounter with the death during their voyage. The plot talks about their possible attempts to save their lives. The story, We Are Not Afraid to Die, is an example of the fact that courage, bravery, and togetherness can be a remedy for any illness of the world. The characters of this story. The narrator. He is a 37-year-old businessman. He wants to duplicate the round-the-world journey made by Captain James Cook 200 years earlier. He spends a long time improving his sea skills and finally begins his journey with his wife Mary, 6-year-old son Jonathan, and 7-year-old daughter Suzanne. Mary. She is the narrator's wife. She supports her husband's dream and improves her sea skills. She joins her husband on their planned 3-year voyage. Larry Vigil, an American who joins the narrator and Mary at Cape Town to help them tackle one of the world's roughest seas. Herb Sigler, a Swiss who also joins them at Cape Town to help them cross the southern Indian Ocean. Suzanne, the narrator's 7-year-old daughter who displays immense courage throughout their voyage. Jonathan, he is the narrator's 6-year-old son who shows immense strength and optimism even in the difficult times. Now let me tell you the summary. The voyage begins, that is preparation before voyage. In July 1976, the narrator with his wife Mary, 6-year-old son Jonathan and 7-year-old daughter Suzanne started their sea voyage from Plymouth, England. They wished to go around the world on a long sea journey just as Captain James Cook had done 200 years earlier. The narrator and his wife had spent 16 years preparing for the round-the-world voyage and improving their marine skills. Their boat, Wavewalker, was a 23-meter, 30-ton boat that was professionally built, and they had tested it in the roughest weather they could find. The first part of their planned 3-year 105,000 kilometer journey passed pleasantly as they sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. Then they took 2 crewmen, the American Larry Vigil and the Swiss Herb Sigler, before heading east from the Cape Town to help them tackle one of the world's roughest seas, that is the southern Indian Ocean. The problem begins during the voyage. That is, on the second day out of the Cape Town, they encountered strong winds and high waves. The windstorms continued for the next few weeks. The size of the waves was up to 15 meters. On December 25th, they were 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town, but the weather was very bad. Despite the bad weather, they celebrated Christmas Day wonderfully. New Year's Day saw no improvement in the weather, and it worsened with the passing of time. Hence, on 2nd January, the waves were gigantic. They were sailing with a small storm jib, but still they were going very fast. The boat moved to the top of each wave, but the gigantic waves and dangerous wind continued to terrorize them. To minimize the damage, they dropped the storm jib and lashed a heavy rope in a loop across the stern. Then they fastened everything, went through their life raft drill, attached life lines and put on oilskins and life jackets and prepared themselves for the worst case scenario. Disaster strikes. The first indication of impending disaster came about at 6 p.m. with an ominous silence. The wind stopped and the sky immediately grew dark. Then a loud roaring sound was heard. The narrator thought that he saw a cloud coming towards them. With horror, he realized it was not a cloud but the biggest wave that he had ever seen. It appeared vertical and double the height of other wave. The wave hit the boat and a tremendous explosion shook the deck. Water poured into the boat. The narrator's head smashed against the steering wheel of the boat, and before he knew it, he was thrown into the sea. He thought he was going to die, but suddenly his head popped out of the water. He saw that the boat had almost capsized. Suddenly, a wave hurled it upright, and the narrator was tossed onto the boat. His left ribs were cracked. His mouth was filled with blood and some teeth were broken. Somehow he managed to find the wheel, lined up the stern for the next wave and hung on. The narrator knew that the boat was flooding with water, but he dared not abandon the wheel to investigate. Suddenly, Mary came and informed him that the boat was sinking as water was pouring in. He handed the wheel to her and crawled towards the hatch. Larry and Herb pumped the water out like madmen. The wooden beams had broken. The whole starboard side had bulged inwards. Clothes, crockery, charts, tins, and toys moved around noisily in water. The boat had been damaged. He somehow managed to reach the children. Sue had a big bump on her head to which he did not pay much attention. He found a hammer, screw, and canvas. Somehow he managed to stretch the canvas and secure waterproof hatch covers across the gaping holes. Some water continued to come in, but most of it could be prevented from entering the boat. But this was not the end of their troubles. Damaged and lost equipment, the hand pump started jamming with the trash floating around the cabin. Soon their electric pump got short-circuited and the water rose threateningly. He found that their two spare hand pumps had been pulled away by currents along with the forestay sail, the jib, the lifeboats, and the main anchor. He managed to find another electric pump to drain out the water. The night was an endless, bitterly cold routine of pumping, steering, and working the radio. However, there was no response to their mayday calls as they were in a remote corner of the world. Sue's head had swollen alarmingly. She had two black eyes and a deep cut on her arm. She did not tell the narrator more of her injuries as she didn't want to worry him when he was trying to save them all. On the morning of January 3, the pumps had reduced the amount of water on board. Each of them took rest for 2 hours by turns. They had survived for 15 hours since the wave hit the wave walker. But the boat was not strong enough to take them to Australia. The narrator knew that the boat wouldn't hold together long enough. He checked his charts and calculated that the only one hope for them was if they could reach L'Amsterdam, a French scientific base, one of the two pinpricks in the vast ocean. Mary found some corned beef and cracker biscuits, and they ate their first meal in almost 2 days. However, their relief was short-lived. The weather again started deteriorating. And by the dawn on 5th January, their situation was again desperate. The narrator went to comfort the children. He tried to assure them that they were going to make it. John said that they were not afraid of dying if they can all be together. This gave the narrator hope and a reason to fight the sea. He tried his best to protect the weakened starboard side of the boat. However, later in the evening, as more water came into the boat, they felt defeated again. On 6th January, the weather improved. The narrator again tried to calculate their position. While he was at work, Sue came to him and gave him a card. She had drawn caricatures of Mary and the narrator. The card said that she loved them both and hoped for the best. The narrator was filled with optimism. Somehow they had to make it. The narrator made several calculations using a spare compass, made some adjustments, and asked Larry to steer a course of 185 degrees. He said if they were lucky, they would see the island at about 5 p.m. Dejected, he went down to his bunk and fell asleep. It was about 6 p.m. when he woke up. He thought that they must have missed the island. Just then, John and Sue came to him and gave him a hug and said that you are the best daddy in the world. The narrator was confused. Sue announced that the island was just in front of them. He rushed out to the deck and saw the most beautiful island in the world. It was Amsterdam, a piece of volcanic rock with little vegetation. When his feet touched the land the very next day, he thought of cheerfulness and optimism of all the people on the boat, which made them passing through the worst stress. Now, the moral of the story, that's the last part of it. The most important lesson that we learn from such hazardous experience when we are face to face with death is not to lose hope under any circumstances. At times, life presents very dire situations, but if one is optimistic about finding a solution and overcome the odds, one will always be successful. I hope, students, you must have understood the chapter well. If you have liked the video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.